the question, can we do it in 3 weeks? Can we do it in 1 week? Can we do it tomorrow?
Yeah.
So there's some sort of a time pressure, some sort of sense of urgency that should always be in the room.
Our challenge as leaders within organizations is to really help employees be very clear what they're signing up for.
Yeah. How resilient do you have to be as an employee to be able to handle these kind of processes?
It is nature and nurture when it comes down to resilience. So yes, you bring your nature with you. You already bring your experiences in life, your habits.
How do you create that people really, truly feel safe enough to speak up?
Figure out, how can I set my boundaries? How do I ask for help, right? How can I leverage these different avenues?
Hi, and welcome back for another episode of Open Up at the Workplace. Here we love to talk about opportunities and challenges when it comes to work and mental well-being. I'm Vanessa Lamsveld, a psychologist at Open Up, and I'm very excited to be your host. Today we will be talking about speed and growth, extremely speedy growth within a company. It's a phenomenon called hypergrowth, and today's guest knows everything about hypergrowth and about making sure employees feel valued and supported. Welcome, Lindsay Ross, Chief Human Resources Officer at Bitpanda.
Cool, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. And I have to say, when I first heard of the term hypergrowth, it gave me panic attacks, only the word in itself. And I was thinking, what was your first thought when you heard of hypergrowth, and specifically in relation to mental well-being?
I think when I first heard the term, I was already in it. And I don't think you sort of realized you're in it until you're in it.
But were you panicking?
No, because it was kind of the everyday norm, I think. At that moment, maybe go back to what is it, right? So this is really when, if you think about it and you're on the floor within your work experience, and you guys are bringing on people so fast, right? Revenues are going up, business is growing, you're expanding into new countries and regions. There's just a lot. So everything is coming at you full on. And as an employee or anybody within an organization, if you can think about what that feels like, right? You're literally getting hit everywhere and you're running 1,000 miles an hour and it never stops.
Yeah.
That's hypergrowth.
Yeah. And what did you think when it comes to mental well-being?
You have to figure out how to navigate this, right? And so the resilience component is huge for folks. And so if you really think about something that never stops, that's a lot of pressure, right? And it's oh my gosh, how do I prioritize this? How do I step away? How do I actually turn the laptop down, move away, maybe even take some, a 5-minute break to get something to eat, whatever that might look like. And so really when it comes to the mental health and well-being of people, you have to help them figure out their boundaries and how to balance this, because again, it doesn't stop.
Yeah, it never stops. Before I'm probably going to introduce you to our listeners, I first want to turn to you, Gijs Coppens, founder of OpenUp and healthcare psychologist. You will be joining me every episode, and mostly I will pick your brain on your understanding and insights as a psychologist. But today, you're a founder of also a company that's growing very speedy. So I would also love to hear from you as a founder. And I was thinking, when I thought about what would Gijs be thinking, I thought maybe as a founder he thinks when he hears hypergrowth, yay, this is what I want. But as a psychologist, you might be more like, how am I going to balance these two? Is this...
That's true, that if you found a company and you're ambitious, you want to play the Champions League, then you should be prepared for hypergrowth. And that's, of course, what you need and what you want as an entrepreneur, to grow very fast. And of course, I'm constantly also struggling in how to do that right, how to do that in a way that we can, all live up to the expectations. We raised our finger for a very big mission, but also to do that in a way that you can balance it with other roles in life than being just a founder. So I can really echo the words of Lindsay. It's always there. There's always more work to do.
Yeah.
So yes, that's also a struggle, I would say, sometimes.
Yeah. Well, in today's episode, I hope to find, together with the two of you, the answer to the question, how do hypergrowth and keeping your mental well-being on par go hand in hand? And whilst discussing that, we will also look at modern approaches when it comes to mental well-being in the workplace. Lindsay, you are the perfect guest to discuss this with. Let me briefly explain to our listeners who you are and why you're so perfect to be here today. Lindsay Ross is known in the market as an ambitious, versatile, and passionate people leader. She worked from startups to multi-billion-dollar enterprises and has a huge track record when it comes to hiring the right people, helping them learn and grow, and making sure they feel valued and supported. Lindsay has been working as Chief Human Resources Officer at Bitpanda for almost 3 years. Bitpanda is an Austrian fintech company, and the aim of the founders was to build a platform that makes investing accessible for everyone. Well, that has gone pretty well. Bitpanda is one of the fastest growing fintechs in Europe. And so when the company was looking for a people leader in their board of directors, they were thrilled to hire Lindsay. Bitpanda's co-founder and CEO said at the time, Lindsay was recruited because of her understanding of hypergrowth and because she has proven to have the right amount of energy and empathy. Gijs, I know you highly appreciate Lindsay's work.
Yes.
Why do you think Lindsay is such a good people leader?
Well, that energy and empathy, I can fully relate to that. And energy for me is also the atmosphere around someone. So if you enter the room, then you always bring an energy with you.
Yeah.
Some sort of an atmosphere that people get influenced by. And when I met Lindsay, I would say we are in that hypergrowth energy. That's just how it feels. You kind of lift the atmosphere up. And I think that's also what they felt at Bitpanda in hiring Lindsay. And I think the second thing that I find very interesting is that when I talk to Lindsay, she makes things simple.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, also very important in a hypergrowth environment. So the first thing has to do with atmosphere, the energy that someone brings to the room. Mm-hmm. And I think it's very important as a leader that you lift the group up to another energy level. And I think that's something that Lindsay can bring. That's, I would say, something even that you get born with in a way. So that's maybe very difficult to train. That's just what some people have, and they bring that to the table. And the other thing that you, of course, can train is to make things simple. So in a startup environment, if you want to grow fast, you need to be very explicit. You need to get rid of all distractions. You need to focus. It is very easily said, but very difficult to really do that and put that into practice. And every time I talk to Lindsay, my life gets a bit simpler. And I think she has that effect on other people, and that makes her a great leader.
Yeah. You agree?
Very nice, thank you. I like the simple element. I think that is the best way, actually, to kind of both lead an organization, but I think especially in times like this where you do have to be so succinct. Absolutely.
Yeah. Hey, as a people leader, you have to care, of course, about the well-being and professional growth of other people. But I first want to ask about, how do you take care of your own mental well-being? We have a format for that. I have 10 different questions on mental well-being, each with a number. And every episode, we ask our guests to choose a number between 1 and 10. And then Destiny will decide which question on mental well-being it will be for you.
Ooh.
So 1 to 10.
1 to 10. 10 being the highest.
Yeah, 10?
Let's do 10.
Which fictional character do you think would give the best advice on handling stress and why?
Fictional character.
You chose 10.
I did choose 10. Yeah. I got to think about this. That's a good curveball.
I have an idea.
Yeah?
No, Donald Duck popped up in my mind.
Donald Duck, okay.
Because Donald Duck has so much resilience, you know. He picks himself up every time again because he has a lot of negativity and pitfalls and everything goes wrong in the life of Donald Duck.
Yeah.
But he starts over again every day.
Yeah. So resilience, we heard that word before. And we heard simplicity, right? So he's also quite simple.
Yeah, so I don't know. I don't know if this is the best example, but that was kind of the first image that popped in my mind. But I'm really happy to learn your example.
I'm not sure if you can top this or want to top this. So
give me another number. Give me another number. Let's go with number 8.
Okay, if you could invent a gadget to instantly swap away stress, what would it do and what would you call it?
What?
Great questions, huh?
What would I call it? Well, first, I think we would just call it what it is, the stress swapper. And I think it would be something that would say, calm down, give me your top 3. Let's do those today.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. So structure it.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. I want to get back to our topic of today, hypergrowth. And you already mentioned it briefly in the beginning, but can you please explain what hypergrowth exactly is and when is the growth so big that we call it hypergrowth in a company?
Technically, it's by the book, it says if your compound annual growth rate is about 40% or more year over year. I think what we would actually say it is when you're growing really fast and you can't get enough people on the bus. I think that's the big thing, right?
Yeah.
If you take companies, for instance, Bitpanda went through it, of course. You have Adyen here in Amsterdam, Miro, Molly, those people all go through big old scale quite quickly.
Yeah, so those are also companies you would say hypergrowth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That have done it, yeah.
Yeah. Is OpenUp, Gijs, dealing with hypergrowth?
Yeah, so according to this definition, we grow, we tripled last year, so times 3 in 1 year.
Yeah.
And the full group, including iPractice, is doubling every year. So that's also, you could say, hypergrowth. Not yet at the scale of Adyen, Molly, Bitpanda, because the order of magnitude is larger. So more and more people, more funding, more revenues.
Yeah.
But in principle, we're also showing since foundation this hypergrowth curve.
Yeah. And what does hypergrowth then look like on the work floor? So you already mentioned, right? It's you can't get enough people on the bus. I can imagine that also means in practice you're seeing a lot of new people coming in all the time. Can you sketch what it looks like?
I think if we were to look at sort of hypergrowth, let's say the pre-last 2 years, right? Hypergrowth is really where you're hiring so fast. So think about 100 people joining your organization month over month.
Yeah, 100 every month.
Right? That type of, right? Your business is doubling. Your revenues are going through the roof. You are expanding. You're going, for instance, if I take Bitpanda, we went from 3 kind of primary hubs to all of a sudden over 20 different jurisdictions in under 10 months. So you are also breaking into new markets, right? You're setting up things super fast. That's hypergrowth.
Yeah. And how do you see that reflected in Bitpanda's workforce? So, what kind of characteristics, what kind of type of people do we see? If I would enter the room, what would I notice?
Builders. Yeah. I think there's a special nuance of folk that are really successful in this type of environment. And so that is people who they like to get their hands dirty, but can see a little bit more of the perspective, right? Mm-hmm. They have no issue jumping in with the teams, whether you're in a leadership position or whatever else that might look like. I think you are really at that moment as well, moving from what we would call sort of more generalists into more specialized people. So all of a sudden you see right within your organization, people who are suddenly becoming more focused or more specialized in certain things. Their remits are changing. It's a lot of change, a lot of speed, and people that are really it's long hours. They're running, like I said, 1,000 miles an hour with you.
Yeah. And is this then very different if it's a platform that deals with investing in crypto, stocks, precious metals, or dealing with psychologists? Or do you recognize what Lindsay is saying?
Yeah, I fully recognize it. So you start with a small team of generalists. You start to build. Everyone is engaged in a lot of processes. There's a lot of informal catching up, understanding what to do. As the founder, you have a lot of influence on those processes. That's more early stage. And when you get to a bigger size, we now have in headquarters around 120 colleagues. Then you need to really organize. You search for the specialists. They all need to be builders, but you specialize more. And I think with hypergrowth is also the question, can we do it in 3 weeks? Can we do it in 1 week? Can we do it tomorrow?
Yeah.
So there's some sort of a time pressure, some sort of sense of urgency that should always be in the room.
And do you feel that in the room? If I would walk on the work floor, do you feel the tension?
Absolutely. But I think with the tension comes a lot of energy and excitement, right? So it's an optimization game. I think if you were to walk in there, you will see some people that are rallying the troops, like I said, right? You're a firefighter and are solving problems or building things for tomorrow instead of a week from now or 2 weeks from now. And on the other side, you've got half your organization doing interviews, trying to assess people to get in, right? You have new people walking around onboarding, trying to figure out where do they even go because they're sort of thrown into the deep end, as we say. And so you do feel like a lot of pressure, but also a ton of excitement.
Yeah. Work hard, play hard.
Yeah, really. And also a lot of things all the time are going on. I find it very interesting. So
Yeah. So now we know a bit what hypergrowth looks like. I want to talk a bit about the challenges, because I can imagine that a lot of people listening today think, surely there must be a tension between hypergrowth and mental well-being. I mean, it's already challenging to balance work-life in a normal-paced company, let alone in an environment as you describe. Do you agree with that, Lindsay? Is there a natural tension between hypergrowth and mental well-being?
I think so. I do think so. I think actually, if you were to ask sort of what is the best, how do you find that balance? What does this look like? The first thing I would always ask somebody is to be very clear, is this the right environment for them? Because you have to like it.
Yeah.
Right? If you are somebody that prefers structure, prefers clarity and long-term planning, right? This is not the space for you at this moment in time. And I think our challenge as leaders within organizations is to really help employees be very clear what they're signing up for.
Yeah.
Right? That's the number one, as we say, safeguard to make sure that your mental health and well-being is okay, because you got to love the environment you're in and be realistic about what you're signing up to get into.
I fully agree. And if you really love that, if it really fits you, then it's a great environment. Because you have this big mission, you're driving change in society, you're launching something new. So then you have a lot of appetite to get out of bed and make that happen. And that's, of course, if you talk about a meaningful job, a meaningful life, that's very meaningful to people. Yeah. But you got to be fit for the environment. If you're fit, it's fantastic.
Yeah. And what do you think for you personally? What makes you fit?
As we say, I personally love the crazy.
Yeah.
I love it, right? I love the speed. I love the dynamics. I like the fact that there's a million things going on and that you have to figure out how to prioritize. I love the energy that comes with it. And I do like the challenges. How do you find not only that balance, but how do you prioritize? How do you set your teams up and your employees up for success? Because it's not easy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what are the moments that you think, oh, this is getting too much for me?
I would say it comes in ebbs and flows, right? So there's no one particular moment. I think you sort of, at some point, kind of hit a wall and you're like, oh gosh, like I have to step away for a hot minute. I think it's more that. Yeah. Because like we said at the beginning, it never stops.
Yeah.
And so at some point for yourself, you personally will kind of hit that moment where you're like, all right, can I keep doing this at this speed? I probably need 5 minutes for myself. Yeah.
We're going to talk later about how to handle it. Gijs, I saw you, I was thinking, are you there at the moment?
No, so I think I'm pretty disciplined. So I think you need a lot of discipline. So you need to understand what you need to do.
Yeah. And
you need to execute.
Yeah.
So sometimes people say, follow your heart, follow your feelings. I would say follow your plan and execute. And I'm not saying I'm not following my heart. But there's some sort of a level of execution that's very important in a startup environment. And that also means that you sometimes cross your own boundaries.
Yeah.
So I tend to do that. And that means that you are just too much engaged in activities, in meetings, in different topics. And you need to do that. But you cross your boundary. And then I need to, recover, basically. Have a good rest, have a good sleep, have a good weekend, have a good run. Do something for your recovery, organize that. And then you're fit for the job again.
Yeah.
But of course, there are moments that you think, okay, now this was just too much. I need to recover.
Yeah. You're a founder. You're a board member. What are the challenges for the workforce at Bitpanda? Is that the same or is that different?
I think it's a challenge for anybody in these types of environments, right? Again, it's obviously with an individual twist to it, but it is finding that right balance for you, right? So it could be, to your point, saying, hey, I need to set a boundary. I need to step away for a minute. I need to have a good weekend. Some people can go longer. Some people need to log off and jump on later. Whatever that is, I think people need to be really realistic with themselves on how they set that up.
Yeah.
And that's not just in a hypergrowth environment. That's kind of everywhere.
Yeah.
I think it's just something that we all have to innately get better at in the workforce, full stop.
Yeah. But if you are talking about mental well-being at Bitpanda, what is for you now the biggest challenge you're facing? So
we did the stereotypical hypergrowth, right? When I joined in 21, fast scale. So we pretty much 3x the company in the course of the 10 months in terms of employee base, in terms of what we were doing as an organization, and like I said, also across the jurisdictions.
3x is super quick, right?
It's super fast.
Yeah.
So with that, then we had a really difficult period, like a lot of tech companies out there, where we had to do a big restructure, which is already from an organizational culture perspective, an employee culture perspective, very, very difficult to navigate. And now, as you guys are probably seeing, we're starting to feel the entry of a bull run. So we've come out of the economic downturn and are now entering a more positive market sentiment. That's a lot of change over the course of a very short amount of time for people. So I think in our specific organization, that level of honestly, that dramatic shift is huge to cope with.
Yeah.
And you got to wrap your head around what that looks like, and also to get prepared now for running 1,000 miles an hour again is a lot for people.
Because in 2022, you had the huge layoff, right? You had a third of the company had to go. What insight did that bring you on mental well-being and how employees can handle an event like that?
I think if we are all really honest with ourselves, I think hiring during hypergrowth never goes well, right? You can never onboard and effectively hire 100 plus people a month. It just doesn't work, right? Not without certain elements taking hits. And I think when you do a big restructure like that across all the different jurisdictions, that also just never goes 100% seamlessly, right? And the reason why is because it's a very impersonal approach, and it has to be by nature of how it operates, right? And so lessons learned for us is, especially as leaders, often you're more in it in the day-to-day than the employee base. You understand the business rationale and why you have to do it. You understand the process and what that looks like. And so you're further along in that recovery journey. And I think when you go through a restructure like that, you have to remember your employees need to get on that same wavelength with you again. And that takes time. And so for us, for instance, being able to have partnerships like with you guys, with OpenUp, and having those avenues for people to basically just go through that experience, talk about how that impacts them. All of a sudden, their colleagues that they've worked with for X amount of months or years is suddenly gone.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a big shift. And so that type of stuff, to have those avenues is really critical.
Yeah. And Gijs, then a question to you as a psychologist, because we earlier also mentioned resilience. How resilient do you have to be as an employee to be able to handle these kind of processes?
I'm quite resilient in a startup environment. You're constantly understaffed, or there's a lot of pressure on your calendar, on your tasks, on your output that is requested from you. I think what we need to do as management, we are in the driver's seat in those kind of processes. So we know what's coming up. We have quite a predictable future. It's still unpredictable, still uncertain. But that predictability in those processes, or for employees, can be very important.
Yeah.
But that's also something I struggle with, because yes, we can be predictable. We try to be long term, but at the end, you're also always looking to the quarter, 2 quarters ahead, and every quarter is different. So it's always a balance between providing a storyline that makes things predictable, so that people feel, that they also understand what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, there's so much things happening on the short run that are uncertain. So also prepare your colleagues, your employees, to deal with that uncertainty themselves and how to do that. Mm-hmm. That's important.
Yeah.
So within OpenUp, for instance, what I really like is that we provide all the colleagues, all the employees with a leadership training, how to navigate in an uncertain world. Because the startup environment is in itself an uncertain world. So we need to navigate that.
Yeah, so you really have to build on that resilience and to learn them how to cope.
No, it's nature and nurture. It is nature and nurture when it comes down to resilience. So yes, you bring your nature with you. You already bring your experiences in life, your habits that are supporting your recovery. And of course, as a company, you also need to nurture that resilience. So you need to train your people. You need to make them aware of what's going to happen. You should have meaningful conversations with your direct manager about it, things like that. So it's nature and nurture in these situations.
Yeah, and this nature as a CHRO, are you able to recruit on that well? This nature of resilience and being able to manage uncertainty?
I think so. I think this is a very tactical answer, but usually we would have in interview processes that final sort of sense check. We call it like a bar raiser, right? Stealing from Amazon. But you have these like sense checks to see exactly that. Can you work in an environment like this? Do you like to work the way that we like to work? And are you resilient? Because I think, again, companies like ours are so transparent about what it is to work here and what it's like. We have to check that for everybody else signing up, because that's the first gateway. Yeah.
Because do you have any knowledge on burnout rates at Bitpanda? Is that, and how that compares to other companies?
I can honestly say from our, again, different countries, different regulations, different all sorts of things, but we don't have anybody on long-term sickness. I don't have one long-term sickness case.
How do you?
No idea.
Explain that. No, I'm surprised.
No, yeah, and I think it's also, again, I think we have an extraordinary employee base. What else can I say? I think they're very in it with us. I think they're very clear on how and what we do and what they need to do to contribute. And I think, again, we've tried to really what we call a speak up, talk straight culture, right? And so we really advocate for people to voice if they need help, if they need support, if they need things like time off, a break, a moment, right? To be able to cope with this type of stuff. Yeah.
Now, I think also in recruitment, you learn a lot. So in the beginning, with recruitment, it's always you have a problem. There's too much tasks. So you want to hire someone and you want to solve that problem. So you want to hire fast. And in that wish to hire fast, especially early stage, as a founder, you make mistakes. And you learn who to hire and what to assess. And that's, of course, when you progress along the way and you get more to the adulthood of Bitpanda-like companies, then you hope that your recruitment is that well developed, that mature, that you can really assess, okay, this is indeed a good DNA match. This is, in terms of nature, someone that really fits the environment.
And that's actually, to that point, that is the most critical hiring criteria. The rest we can teach, but I can't teach that. Yeah.
Interesting. What you said about the speak up, talk straight culture, I think is very interesting. How do you create that people really, truly feel safe enough to speak up?
It's a good question. I think it's trust. Right? It all starts with trust, of course. And you have to give folks a myriad of different avenues, right? Because that's how you sort of start with the foundation. So when, of course, line managers, training, leadership, that kind of stuff is key. So how do you actually engage with your employees and try and coax some good feedback out of them? We also leverage a myriad of different channels, right? So again, we have things like your HR business partners. We have things like whistleblowing tools or just hotlines. You have anonymous methods that you can give us feedback through town hall, whatever it is, right? We have just a myriad of different ways that allow people to give their voice in whatever way is comfortable for them. I think that for us has been really important because not only when you go through a restructure, is that already a hard thing? And to your point, how we try and as leaders within organizations try and give some clarity and some structure and some plans. Sometimes things move so fast that trust can be a really fine thing.
Yeah.
And so it is stretched. Some would even say there's moments of it being broken when you have to do something so dramatic. And so you have to be able to give folks, like I said, different avenues of safety so that they can speak.
And what if you make that concrete, what are avenues of safety?
Like I said, it's anything from your line manager conversations. There's different methods of feedback, right? Whether it's 360 feedbacks or we have anytime feedback, for instance, with us. If there's literally issues, then you can also go to your HR business partner. You can come right up to management, which has an open door. We also have anonymous, literally whistleblowing tools and things like that. So you have all sorts of avenues that you can leverage. Yeah.
Hey, and you've worked at companies without hypergrowth, Nike, Tommy Hilfiger. Is it very different there to manage mental well-being in the workforce?
It's a different, absolutely. But I would say there's still innate pressures, right? I think this is just welcome to life and work, right? You have to find this out. Are you hiring 100 people a month? No, not necessarily. But you have a very different type of structure, a different type of pressure, a different type of environment. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think, well, what I also hear in this, what we discussed before is you need certain characteristics to be able to work in a hypergrowth company. And that's different from a normal paced company, but that doesn't have to say that you don't have these challenges in other companies as well. Is that the right conclusion?
Yeah, and I would say that, like, for instance, in Nike, of course, the predictability of Nike is higher than in a startup environment. So people know more what to expect. And Nike probably has like 80% of their product offering is quite stable. And they have some 20% changes going on all the time. But there's more stability in such an environment. That's kind of my assumption. Compared to the companies that grow, that double or that triple in a year. And also, I can imagine a layoff, for instance, in startups is often a bit heavier. And then we're talking about a scale that is pretty significant.
Yeah, big numbers.
Yeah, so I think there's a difference. But of course, I'm not an expert in that, Lindsay. But do you think there's a difference between these more corporate companies like Nike and startup environments?
I think there's just a fundamental difference in the work culture, right? And but again, that's the whole point. For people that are successful in tech, for people that are successful in startups, in hypergrowth, are not going to be ones that are going to be super successful in corporate life. It's a very different way of working. If you give some really clear examples, if you walk into a tech company using Slack, right? They have like 1 million unopened Slack messages. You're all over the place, right? 90% of your business is done in Slack. Everything is on demand. It's fast. If I go back to my days in the corporate world, this is much more email chains.
Yeah.
Right? And CCing and BCCing everybody under the sun and going up the ladder. But again, when you deal with a listed company versus a privately held company, also very different, right? Yeah. And I think if you look at a Nike or a Tommy Hilfiger or anybody in the consumer world, they have very different pressures. Yeah. So I think when people always ask me, is it different dealing with employees in hypergrowth or in tech companies or is it versus a corporate life? I would say it is different, but the nuance is more in the corporate in the corporate culture, and not necessarily the pressures, because people will experience different pressures that are still equally substantial.
Interesting. Because I was thinking when I was preparing this, so hypergrowth might be the top sport, right, in company-wise. So there are also lessons learned for normal-paced companies. But actually what you're saying is, no, there's pressure everywhere, but it's a different accent.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It is interesting, by the way, that you could adjust from that corporate world to that scale-up world. How would you explain that?
The one thing I always tell everybody making the shift, if you go from corporate to tech, unlearn everything you ever learned.
And what was the hardest to unlearn?
It's just it's the speed. I think I remember we would have long days. We worked hard. We were fast executors, all that kind of stuff. But when you walk into tech, it's like, oh my gosh, you just transformed the world as of tomorrow. It's wild how fast it goes. So you have to be able to cope with that. Formalities are very different. It's much more, as we say, like, you don't send an email. You pick up the phone and have a quick chat or a Slack message because you got to get the answer now and move, right? So it is a little bit different that way. And I think my favorite one is the politics are gone.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. The titles don't matter. That's just not how it rolls. So it is a bit different.
Do you have a memory? As psychologists, we love stories. So do you have a memory of when you just entered that hypergrowth environment and thought, oh, wow, this is what I need to deal with it? The moment that you were behind your desk and thinking, goodness.
It was more, I just remember, this was at Adyen at the time, and we were still only, I think at that moment, 550 people when I joined. And it was more, you're walking on these floors and people were just so busy. And you would overhear the conversations and you're like, what? I didn't understand anything that everyone was talking about. But then, you would come back and hear an update 5 days later, and it was solved, it was sorted, it was done, it was executed, it was gone. And I mean, this would take weeks to months in the old world, right, as we call it. So I think it was that moment of going, oh my gosh, so we can actually move that fast.
Yeah.
Like that was, I think, for me, the coolest sort of revolutionary moment where we could get something off the ground that quickly. Yeah, that realization.
Do you have a memory at OpenUp?
Well, now I think as a founder, when I started the company, then I hired some students because I did my recruitment. I wanted to have, let's say, a full house when people were coming for their interviews. And I still am very grateful when I see all the new joiners, for instance, in the company, and when I see the people working together, the product team working together. The product now is, I would say, amazing. It's really, where we thought of 2 years, it's now all happening. And that realization that, yes, I am a builder, but I cannot build everything. So you need a lot of good people around you to build together. And that realization, I have it pretty often. And for me, the top of our hiring was around 1 year ago. We were hiring a couple of months in a row, 30 people per month. That was our fast-paced growth in those days. And then I really also needed to talk to the people, of course, during the onboarding days. That was also for me a realization from, wow, it's really happening. People are joining the mission. It gets big.
Yeah.
So that's really an incredible feeling. And you get very much energized of it.
Very cool. Yeah. Hey, so I think we can conclude, yes, it's challenging, hypergrowth and mental well-being going hand in hand, but it is definitely possible. But the question is, of course, how? So what can you do? We already discussed a few things. But I want to put this forward to you, because during my research, I came across an interview with a CEO from another hypergrowth company. And she said, hypergrowth and mental well-being can live out of harmony with each other very easily and very naturally, unless you're incredibly intentional about harmonizing these two together. And intentional means throwing resources behind it and prioritizing it as a CEO. I had to think about that last line, throwing resources behind it and prioritizing it as a CEO. And I thought, what does that mean in practice? I mean, it sounds really good, but what does it mean? I know it's not your line, so maybe you don't know, but it's...
Do you know what's funny? And I love the statement, but to me that doesn't resonate. And here's why. I would say the first part where she says, be really intentional. That's awesome. But I would say that's intentional for everybody. The CEO cannot fix this for you, right? The business can't fix this for you. The only thing that we can do is give you avenues and, to her point, resources and the ability to help navigate it, but the onus is on you. And I think, again, if you say, what can you do? The number one thing you can do as an organization, but actually as somebody wanting to join an organization, be very, as we say, intentional. Be very clear what you're signing up for and actively choose to sign up. If you don't like it, actively choose to leave it for your own mental health and well-being. That is like paramount to anything you can do.
So is intentional than being super clear?
I think intentional is being very cognizant of what it is you're walking into, what it is the day-to-day will look like, and actively choosing to be a part of it and working that way. Because that way of working will not change. Yeah. That's just innate in the organization, in the foundation, in the DNA of how the company was built. Yeah. Right? And so I think for people to be successful, they have to be able to cope in that type of environment, which also means, and this is where I think her resources comment is coming from, which I would say is being able to figure out, how can I set my boundaries? How do I ask for help, right? How can I leverage these different avenues?
Yeah. And what role does leadership then have in that?
I think more than anything, it's talking to your people. And how fluffy does that sound, right? But I genuinely mean this. I can't help you unless I know what's going on. Yeah. And so I have to have those conversations. Sometimes they're difficult conversations, but they're so important. Yeah. If something is going skewy, I can zoom in on that with you, say, hey, what's going on here? What do you need? What support can I offer you? It's not my job to tell you what you must do, because what works for me might not work for you. So it's more about engaging in having those conversations and basically fostering that trust and that openness with your employee base, that they can talk about it and that they can say, you know what, I actually need time off and that's okay. I actually need a break. That's okay. I need to talk to somebody. That's okay.
Speak up and talk straight. That's it. Yeah.
I think I can add here that in terms of resources, I would say indeed the time to have that conversation together. That's the minimum what you need. Yeah. You need to make time for that conversation. Yeah. And I think that's also a bit of my struggle maybe, but I think to have really clear focus in a company, so really prioritizing, choosing one thing that's very important for the full company, that kind of practice from the top can...
Can you give an example? What do you mean by that?
In product development, right? What is the most important product feature for the coming quarter that you really want to launch? And to really make a choice there. I find that often difficult. So I think, okay, I want A, B, and C to be added to the product and fast. But but that can be very difficult for the team, because then think, okay, what's now really important? And before you know it, they have a lot of meetings around A, product feature A, B, and C. Yeah. And they're not delivering on any of the three. So to really have that focus and priorities set ready from the top, I think it would help people to develop their mental well-being as well in a company, because you make it very clear.
Very intentional.
Yeah, where they need to go. Yeah. And that's something, I think we are constantly improving in the company.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and that asks something from you as a leader, right? To be clear on what we prioritize.
Yeah, and also, again, to kind of set boundaries and know that you cannot have it all in 2 months and that you may want to choose one thing that you really want.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Hey, and you talked about avenues, and one of the avenues you have at Bitpanda is recharge weeks.
Yep.
What is that?
Okay, so when we were going through hypergrowth, we also noticed as an organization, it's really hard to disconnect, right? So even if you have your holidays, you're still on your phone, you still got your laptop, right? We still have to jump in every once in a while. And we said, you know what? We're going to actually take these 5 days and we're all going to step away. We're going to shut the laptops, step away, and fully recharge as a company. So if I'm not busy, you're not busy, nobody's busy, so we can actually do this. And so that's how it all started.
And when was this? When
that was it was literally, I think I had just joined and we ran it in June that month. It was June 21. Yeah. And so we have them, I think, twice a year now, usually, give take.
And people actually shut off?
People actually shut off. It's right. Of course, you have your cover teams and you have things like this. So you need to make sure the business is operating at some point. But yeah, the majority of the business shuts off. And actually, we've added an additional twist to the one that's coming up this year. And for the first 3 days, instead of completely shutting off and saying, hey, we're going to step away to fully recharge, we're focusing actually what we're calling on Growth Week. So this is the first moment we're stepping away as a company to focus on the development of ourselves and our people, which also never gets time and attention.
And growth, personal growth.
Personal growth. So learning and development, for lack of a better term. Yeah.
And back to the recharge week. What did you do in that week?
Oh, the first one I ever went on, I was down in Spain on an island with my husband, just enjoying some sun and just taking like 5 minutes to sleep in and breathe and relax and just enjoy.
Yeah. And I'm asking this because I can imagine that it's a week that you also just, run up on all the other things you liked because you were working so hard. That's also the critique that some people have on these kind of measures, that it's actually a plaster patch for more fundamental problems.
I would say maybe good to sort of elaborate. We have recharge weeks.
Yeah.
Right. We have also what we call our freedom policies. Right. So caveat this, where I give everybody their statutory holiday requirements, right? So you get, say, 20 days, 25 days annually, plus you get these anywhere between 5 to 10 additional days, and you have unlimited holidays. The whole point with avenues like that is to say, listen, when you need a break, take a break. Don't worry about it. Because the expectation of performance in organizations like ours are so high, right? And you're constantly striving to deliver. Sometimes you shouldn't have to worry about whether or not, hey, do I have enough holiday balance? Can I do that? And I still kind of want to go on a trip there. And, if you need it, take it. If you need an afternoon, take the afternoon. That's the whole point. So I would challenge, if you just had these 2 weeks and you had, only 14 days, a holiday annually, maybe.
Yeah.
But I would say in the European side of the world, I think you're okay.
Yeah. How do you look at that as a psychologist? Recharge weeks?
I think it's very good. I think it's, part of a total package.
Yeah.
So I would say also in terms of recovery, it's an ongoing process. You're always also busy with recovery at the same time. So we're playing a high-level game. We have high standards. The pace is high, but we are also aware of our recovery. Yeah. And of course, holidays are important for that. A recharge week can be very important for that. But it doesn't mean that you kind of only do that recharge week and therefore you can kind of,
exactly.
So I would say it's just an ongoing process. The same is basically with the dialogue around well-being. It's also an ongoing process. So that's more how I look at it. Just it's part of the solution. It's part of the play.
Yeah. What are other modern approaches that you can think of, or maybe that you still have on your wish list, or that you see happening around you? They think, that's really good when it comes to improving mental well-being.
I think flexibility and autonomy are very important. So if you feel that you are in charge of your own calendar, of your own activities, of your own tasks, then you can also handle more stress. And I think, of course, with the lockdowns and the working from home, we have gained a lot of autonomy in a way. So now you see that people can easily combine it with maybe the children at home, or that they feel more flexibility in how they spend their days. We are also more used to having blended meetings, online and offline. So I think the level of flexibility and autonomy has increased significantly. We do need to take care of ourselves, understand how to deal with our time. You can also easily fall in the trap that you're in meetings all day. But in principle, I think that autonomy has increased in previous years.
And do we see that that's effective when it comes to mental well-being?
I think if you would ask people how they experience this flexibility, they will really enjoy it, and they will definitely say it adds up to their mental well-being. I know there are also other statistics. So there's a statistic saying that we have doubled in the number of meetings. I think they will answer that. People will answer that that's not really helpful for well-being. But that flexibility to be at home and work also from home, I think people really enjoy that.
What do you hear from from people working at Bitpanda, what they really appreciate as an avenue?
I think it is that, right? It is that flexibility, that ability to say, you know what, between 6 and 8, that's family time. So I'll be online later if you need me. Or, you know, I have to go pick up the kids at 2 in the afternoon or 3 in the afternoon, right? When would you ever have done that pre-COVID? I think that's huge. I think the other thing that is really cool that a lot of companies are offering is no matter where you are, there's also that ability to have that social element. And I think COVID really emphasized the need for that. And so that is having in-office days or in-office moments, that is giving people passes to the office space, whether that's a WeWork or whatever else, no matter where you are. That also we have to remember is a key component of the mental health and well-being, because it can be very isolating.
Yeah.
If you are, you know,
absolutely,
somebody sort of living solo in a foreign country by yourself, right? So I think the flexibility and the new world of work has been really freeing. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. And if we think out of the box, are there still other modern approaches that companies could consider?
I don't know, but if I reflect, we still have these employment contracts that we agree on 40 hours a week, for instance. It's very interesting because if you manage people, you start managing people on output. What do I expect from you?
Yeah.
And when do we deliver that? But our formal contracts are still a bit old-fashioned. I don't have a clear answer here, but that was just a thinking of myself. You know, why don't we agree on output and make a contract for that? Different story, but that was, I think, in the new way of working, you want to talk about output, what people deliver, and not necessarily time spent.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. It's impact over effort, right?
So, Lindsay, is that then what Gijs just said? Is that the other side of the same coin, for example, with unlimited holidays at Bitpanda? Isn't that, in a way, the same thing?
I think it's again, like in our organization, right? You have like 60 days you can go work from anywhere, right? So all of these freedom things is a good thing, but they are tied to high performance.
Yeah.
So being able to leverage unlimited holidays means you have to be performing to be able to use that benefit. If you're not performing, well, then we're going to have a different conversation, right? So I think, again, it's that partnership. And I think if you go into a route of, is it clocked hours? No, it is impact over effort. But then you have to have like a very clear agreement with your employee base.
Yeah. I agree with that. And it's also something we really need to develop still. It's very new to people.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Very new.
So it really comes in that balance. And it comes also with responsibility. And the more freedom you get, the more responsibility you also have to deliver on that freedom.
Yeah, so if we look at the future, do you have any plans to introduce new avenues to improve mental well-being?
You know, if you were to ask me at the top of my head, what would I implement immediately? I don't know. And you know why? Because I would look to people like yourself and like other folks to tell me what is a good thing and how can we learn and leverage that within the organization. Honestly, I think the most important thing, and there's huge strides that have been made, but still need to come further, is the fact that it's a good thing to talk about. And it's a good thing to address in your organization, and it's a good thing to remove the stigma on.
Yeah.
And if we can continue to do that through whatever and however, we are all going to be able to run so fast and deliver all that goodness that we're all out here to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're talking about mental well-being. I think, learning, high standards, high performance, all comes down also to feeling comfortable in the workplace, really enjoying the game. And that is also very much connected to mental well-being, being in the flow, really liking what you do, seeing the impact that you make every day. So I think mental well-being and performance are very much connected, and that we also are more and more getting into frameworks in which these two also will come together. So that we start to understand for companies the importance of mental well-being for their performance, for their revenues, for their growth, etc.
How far are we on that path, do you think?
We're doing good things. I think, we have the OpenUp Learning Zone. And the OpenUp Learning Zone is high psychological safety, high psychological autonomy, but also high standards.
Yeah.
And then you get into some sort of a learning zone where you want people to be. But you need to constantly develop that. And I think as a leadership, we need to acknowledge that it's a bit the same with parenting. You're a good enough parent. and that's great, you know. But a perfect parent doesn't exist. And there will always be little traumata that we transfer to children. So I really hope to be a good enough leader for the company, and that we are on the right way and doing good enough for people. That's kind of my wish.
I love it. I can't say anything else. I think it's one of these muscles that we have to keep growing, developing, and flexing. Yeah.
So we've come to the end of this episode of Open Up at the Workplace. And thank you so much, Lindsay and Gijs. And actually what I take away from today is how do you manage mental well-being and hypergrowth? What you really struck with me, Lindsay, was when you need a break, take a break, and speak up, talk straight. Those are really important things. And you guys really pointed out flexibility and autonomy are crucial for mental well-being. So I think that's a great takeaway for today. And to all our listeners, I hope you enjoyed the topics discussed in today's episode. We very much value your engagement and feedback. So feel free to get in touch and help us shape our content. And of course, do subscribe to our podcast and share it with your colleagues and friends. Until the next one.